is bitter cold this morning. It was a crystal clear night last night. I'm not even going to shut my truck off. It's 5 below zero right now. I don't know if you can see the mountains way out there in the distance or not. Probably all white. I'm not even going to shut my truck off, man. It is so flippin' cold out here. It's a beautiful, bright, clear day. It's a beautiful, bright, clear day, but I'll tell you what, it is so flippin' cold. Sunny and 5 below. This is why you don't want to come to Idaho. Ooh, man, and the wind's blowing too. Anyway, I've got to show you the beauty of the opposition of all things as Lehi taught in the Book of Mormon, because without this wonderful cold, I wouldn't enjoy the nice warm summers. That's my justification. Hey, it's the only one I can come up with, man. Anyway, it is a beautiful day, but it's way too cold to be out here for very long, so I just wanted to show you what 5 below zero's like. You can't feel it, lucky you. Anyway, I don't know if I can get those mountains out on the background or not. I'm looking toward the Lemhi Range. I'll see if I can get a close-up, and then I'm going to continue on with my discourse on the on 1 Nephi 1 and verses 2 and 3, where he talks about the language situation. It's interesting that one of the concerns, of course, of the record keepers is the language, of course. And that is one of the reasons why Lehi sent the kids back to Jerusalem to get those brass plates, because it preserved the language of the fathers. Remember when the Mulekites came over in the Book of Mormon, they didn't have their language, and so they had degenerated. And that was one of the problems, that was one of the complaints of the Lamanites later on in the history, is they said, yeah, the Nephites stole the Urim and Thummim and the Liahona and the sword of Laban and the brass plates and all, and that's what caused them to be barbaric, because they didn't have the language as the Nephites had it. And of course then they adapted their language to their own use. They changed both the Hebrew and the Egyptian through time, which is how evolutionary languages occur, of course. Ooh, there's a car. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can show you this this mountain range. They're really beautiful. I hope the contrast isn't too hard. Well, they're out there. Yeah, that's them. That's the Lemhis right there. There's the diamond somewhere out there. Oh, it's fuzzing out. Yeah, I can't see it very well. There we go. Well, that's a better shot. That's an awful cold mountain range, I'll tell you what. That's that Saddle Mountain right there that I'm showing you. Don't know if I can get a close-up. Well, that's pretty good. Fades in and out. That Saddle Mountain, and then up toward the north, another 20-30 miles is the diamond way up there. I've camped underneath that. Yeah, you can't see it very well. Anyway, this is Idaho for you. Woohoo! 5 below zero, man. It's too cold to be out here very long. I'm not going to discourse much out here, but just letting you know I'm enjoying my backyard in the cold and the heat and all that. So, okie doke, I'm going to get back in and talk more about the Book of Mormon with you. First, okay, whew, I'm back out of that blistering cold. Wow. Nephi continues his narrative. Oh man, I am so grateful for my nice warm cabin and my nice warm library. I can't tell you. I love the winters here, but I'll tell you what, it's nice to be inside. Nephi continues, he says, this is chapter 1, verse 2 and 3. He says, yea, I make a record in the language of my fathers, which consists of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians. And I know that the record which I make is true, and I make it with my own hand, and I make it according to my knowledge. And as a record keeper, because he intimates later on that Lehi had kept a record, and so of course he was using that example, and he kept a record. You notice the interesting contrast here? Nephi kept a record, but Laman and Lemuel didn't. Jacob and Sam kept the records, but Laman and Lemuel didn't. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Just a subtle contrast. Well, this idea with the language is so remarkable, because he gives a two-pronged approach to this. The learning of the Jews, which of course we would postulate would be the Hebrew, we suspect the brass plates that the kids went and got and then brought back was based on Hebrew. We have the Hebrew Masoretic text, and then the learning the language of the Egyptians. Now, some LDS scholars have proposed that that means that they wrote in Egyptian. I know that was Hugh Nibley's approach, and others have approached it from a different tack. The cultural, the linguistic, and the historical aspects of the Fertile Crescent of the Levant in the Palestinian, Syria, Arabian, Jerusalem area at this time, all the way up north, all the way up along the coast of the Mediterranean, Tyre and Sidon and the Phoenicians and all that, and then all the way down around the Mediterranean, down to the through the Sinai Desert, where you find the Proto-Sinaitic inscriptions, as well as into Egypt. This idea of the bilingual cultural heritage is extremely, extremely strong. And the Book of Mormon opens right up showing you this particular cultural construct that the Jews were utilizing because of the political and the military situations that was occurring. Babylon was starting to breathe down their necks. And see, this is where the Book of Mormon says that there's many prophets that came along. And anyway, I'm getting ahead of my story, but this is where Jeremiah, as well as Lehi, both visited the council of the gods in their visions, and I've got some good stuff on that. And the false prophets were telling the king, they were saying, oh, now don't listen to these negative prophets, go with Egypt. The power of Egypt will save us. Now, the culture was extremely prominent at that time, but the military had already... it was going downhill. It had already passed its zenith. So they threw Jeremiah in the pit and they chased Lehi out of town. They got rid of the true prophets, and the false prophets prophesied falsely to them. So it's anyway. Now this text by Terrell L. Givens, a really outstanding overview of all of the information involving Mormonism, especially with the Book of Mormon. By the Hand of Mormon, the American scripture that launched a new world religion. This is out of Oxford University Press for 2002. Givens talks about, on pages 132 and 133, he describes how Nephi began his account with an explanation that he was writing in the language of my father, and it consisted of the learning of the Jews and the language of the Egyptians, what I just read you. Later, the same chronicler, Moroni, adds his note. Now this is 1,000 years later, as the record keepers had kept the records through time, and of their wars and contentions and peaceful times, and we get little snippets and bits and pieces of life as they had it in both the Old World and the New World. But this is a lineage history, as John Sorensen has noted. It was handed down from father to son, or from king to successor, within the Nephite group. It didn't spread all over Mesoamerica. It wasn't an influence all over Mesoamerica. So this idea that, well, we don't find Hebrew in Mesoamerica, well, so what? We wouldn't expect to. And I've got some information on that I'll share with you anyway. So Moroni adds his note, and he says, we have written this record according to our knowledge in the characters which are called among us the Reformed Egyptian, being handed down and altered by us according to our manner of speech. That's Mormon 9:32. So Mormon scholars have suggested that this means the possibility is the writers used modified Egyptian symbols to represent Hebrew words. And that seems so incongruous to us. We said, why would you modify the Egyptian symbols to write Hebrew? Why don't you just write the Hebrew? Because it was a cultural heritage at this point in time for the Nephite record keepers. They say the Hebrew words, the idioms, and syntax was written in Egyptian cursive script. We actually have archaeological evidence of that I'm going to share with you from Stephen D. Ricks and John Twetness on this. Certainly a bizarre idea for a 19th century audience. No question. I've had critics on the internet say this is utterly ludicrous. Oh no, it's not. It's historical. It may be ludicrous from our point of view, of course. We don't read Hebrew or Egyptian right now. We're in the English phase of civilization, so...